Are terrorists trying to take over the United States of America? It sounds crazy, but let's look up the definition of terrorism. On Google and Oxford, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. On the FBI website, terrorism, under domestic terrorism, violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as those of a political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. So a lot of what you've been seeing across the country these last couple months has been terrorism. Your First Amendment gives you the right to protest peacefully. It does not give you the right to burn down innocent people's businesses. It does not give you the right to burn down police stations and police precincts. It does not allow you to set fire to federal buildings and turn major cities into a war zone by destroying hundreds of properties for a political and social reason. That is literally terrorism. And the craziest part about this terrorism is, of course, whether it's left wing or right wing, I don't think people should use violence to achieve a political agenda, and I always condemn that. However, only one side of the political debate seems to be condemning this terrorism. The other side, in which these terrorists mostly share the same ideology that they have, the left wing or the Democrats, don't seem to be condemning it very much, if at all. Newsweek even reported 54% of Americans think burning down Minneapolis police precinct was justified after George Floyd's death. That's right, about half the country supports domestic terrorism. Most media sources support the domestic terrorism. Politicians wait months before they condemn the domestic terrorism because they realized it was hurting them in the polls. I don't think they cared otherwise. Most major athletes, celebrities, and sports leagues, maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen them condemn this domestic terrorism. I think they share the same politics as these terrorists, and I think they're inspiring and covering up the terrorism. And because so many people are brainwashed by mass media, they don't see what's going on. How did I know in 2018, 2 years ago, people were willing to completely ravage Syria and Libya to gain political power? Those people didn't win the election in America. I am not convinced that they wouldn't do that here. I saw people destroy Syria with terrorists. I saw people invade Libya with terrorists. And the same people who did that politically were the same people who lost the election to President Trump. So I knew that they were going to do exactly that here. Here's Tulsi Gabbard on CNN explaining that to Jake Tapper about what was going on in Syria. And this is why the Democrats and the media hated her. Not because she was a terrible person, because she was more honest than the other candidates. Take a look.
You said it's going to be up to the Syrian people, but there really aren't free and fair elections in Syria.
I'll tell you what I heard from the Syrian people that I met with, Jake, walking down the streets in Aleppo, in Damascus, hearing from them. They expressed happiness and joy at seeing an American walking through their streets, but they expressed a question. They said, why is it that the United States, its allies and other countries are providing support, are providing arms to terrorist groups like al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, Arar al-Sham, ISIS, who are on the ground there raping, kidnapping, torturing, and killing the Syrian people, children, men, women, people of all ages. They asked me, why is the United States and its allies supporting these terrorist groups who are destroying Syria when it was al-Qaeda who attacked the United States on 9/11, not Syria? I didn't have an answer for them.
Obviously, the United States government denies providing any sort of help to the terrorist groups that you're talking about. They say they provide help for the rebel groups. Tell us more about...
The reality is, Jake, the reality is, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because this is an often talked about thing by people like Adam Kinzinger and others saying, well, we've got to support the moderate rebels. Every place that I went, every person that I spoke to, I asked this question to them. And without hesitation, they said, there are no moderate rebels. Who are these moderate rebels that people keep speaking of?
So they're doing the same exact thing they did in Syria here. Well, we can't control the president. That's not our puppet there. That's not the person that we want. They're doing something that we don't agree with, whether it's Bashar al-Assad or Muammar Gaddafi. Let's just fund rebel groups to push our political agenda. But these rebel groups, by definition, if they're causing violence, are terrorists. So you're funding terrorists. Who are these terrorists? In this country, I don't care if you disagree with me politically, but if your idea of a political agenda is to burn things down, you're not a politician. You're not a protester. You're a terrorist. And these terrorists don't even really make sense. I don't agree with any terrorism, but if they were like, we're only going to focus on the big corporations because we're against the big corporations, I wouldn't agree with it, but I would understand the logic that they were going for. But they don't have logic. They're like, let's just burn down a mom and pop shop, hundreds of small businesses, whether it be a black owner owner, a white owner, a Latino owner, a male owner, a female owner. They don't care if the police chief is a black woman. They have no logical reason to what they're doing. They say that they're against the big corporations, but all the big corporations are supporting and covering up what they're doing because they're not a threat to the big corporations. They're a threat to the everyday American. They're a threat to freedom. They're a threat to the democracy that they claim to care about. They didn't win the 2016 election. They don't like the president. They can't even wait until November. They just want to terrorize our country with terrorism, and it should creep you out that most major media, most major celebrities, who are really just political puppets, all support this terrorism. By definition, terrorism. They're doing the same thing they did here to Libya and Syria, and to all those who aren't grateful to be American, you spoiled little hypocritical two-faced brats are going to figure out what it's like to live in a war-torn or third world country, what millions of people escaped to get to America, the immigrants that you claim to care so much about, like the immigrant business owners who are getting destroyed in liberal areas because they can't open up at full capacity, or the immigrant owner who got their business destroyed by these terrorists. You don't care. Only the right wing fully condemns these terrorists, and the left wing just wishy-washy condemns them once every 3 months when it's politically convenient. So I just wanted to show you this stuff, that it's terrorism that's happening in the country, and you might just think it's so social justice and virtuous because you're being mind controlled by LeBron James and Colin Kaepernick and all the major sports leagues, Amazon, McDonald's, they're all in on it. They're all pushing Black Lives Matter. Vote left, vote liberal. While a majority of the left wing either supports this terrorism, doesn't want to talk about it, and does a weak job of condemning it, it's not a coincidence. And when it comes to the true ideology of what the left wing is running by now, these terrorists who are destroying stuff, a lot of them are Marxists and communists, and they believe in abolishing private property. They're not destroying your property randomly. They don't believe it's your property. And these same tactics happen in Syria, and these same tactics happen in Libya, and when they did it to Libya, funded rebel groups to overthrow the leader, it ended up in slavery, not 300 years ago, now. Slavery. That's right. With Barack Obama as president and Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. You've probably never heard about it because liberal news sources like Vice were celebrating these terrorists, aka rebel groups. Hooray! They took down Gaddafi. Hooray! They violently attacked somebody for a political agenda, which is by definition terrorism. Hooray! Our terrorists did something good. Aren't these the same liberals that claim to care about black people? They scream and celebrate when they overthrow a country and then whisper when slavery takes the place of what was an up-and-coming Libya. This is who these people are, which is why Malcolm X called them.
There are many whites who are trying to solve the problem, but you never see them going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox.
He had much more to say, but you'll never hear about that. You'll just watch LeBron James fake read the book. I'm sure he's never read a page or watched a real video of what Malcolm X said about all the politicians LeBron James supports. I'll give you this clip right here.
Today, you could point to a large number of Negro leaders who have consistently betrayed Negroes in a whole host of areas.
They aren't really Negro leaders. These are puppets that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. You can't name me a Negro leader who has been betrayed Negroes, who has not been endorsed, sanctioned, subsidized, and supported by the white liberals.
It's such a joke, but wake up, folks, because if you think it's bad right now, not understand that your country is being literally destroyed by terrorists by definition. If you can't wake up and understand that because you're so indoctrinated and brainwashed by what the corporations, the tech companies, the politicians on both sides, and the celebrity puppets have duped you into thinking is justice, letting your country get taken over by terrorists like Libya and Syria isn't justice. That's the slave master, that's the oppressor, that's the evil devils that you claim to be fighting. You're duped. You're an upside down world. It's time to stop. Well, thank you for listening. God bless you. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful day. And if you like these hats, they're mine. They're made in the United States of America. Very high quality hats. And lots of people have been getting them and giving me great reviews. So I hope you enjoy yours if you got one. And if you haven't, feel free. And if you don't, have a good day. I'll be back soon.
I just make another deal. You don't understand the system. Yeah, I'm about to paint a picture. Yeah, media control the mind and censor everything that ever goes against them. Yeah, why they pin you as a victim? Yeah, so you always stay dependent. Yeah, then they tell you they gon' raise the taxes, help you out with everything you give them. Yeah, the homeless getting bigger. Yeah,